Juvenile auditory. That's what Faraday would have called you in 1827 when he gave the first of his series of Christmas lectures. But now, in 1992, I would like to welcome you aboard our boat. This is an imaginary boat, of course. It's the boat of our imaginations, and it can sail anywhere. Out to the galaxies, sail over the surface of the globe. It can sail into our skulls and down our arteries. And most important, because the later part of these lectures deal with chemistry, it can sail, it can shrink down and sail between the atoms at the molecular level. So you can see you're going to have to use your imaginations quite a bit, as a matter of fact. Furthermore, our imaginary boat can sail both forwards and backwards in time, and we shall be doing that. Now, the theme of these lectures is handedness. Through the Looking Glass is the title of the whole, and this one, Man in the Mirror. Now, the fancy word for handedness is chirality. It comes from the Greek chir, meaning a hand, and this word was invented by Lord Kelvin, who had a strong connection with the laboratories here in the Royal Institution. And it is indeed handedness at the molecular level which controls our existence. Without molecular chirality, you wouldn't be here. And neither would I, as a matter of fact. Okay. So, the fact that molecules lack symmetry, because that important molecules lack symmetry, and we shall come to that, that determines our existence. It determines all biology. And that's something that we want to keep very much in mind. But now, for this lecture, we're going to deal with man in the mirror. So let us, in our examination of chirality, handedness, let us start with man, because after all, man is pretty familiar to us. Okay, so we're going to start at the very beginning with what distinguishes man from all other animals. And these are two very important properties. So let us start off then by looking at language and handedness. And I need to make my first point, I need somebody to help me. Now, will all the people called Henry in the audience please put up their hands? There are very few, but there's one at the back there. Yes, Henry, please come down and give me a hand with this. Noisy, isn't he? Very good. Thanks very much for coming. Did you get your horse parked all right?
Once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more. We'll close up the wall with our English dead. In peace, there's nothing so becomes a man as modest stillness and humility. But when the blast of war blows in our ears, I can't concentrate with you looking over my shoulder.
No wonder. I was going to stop you then anyway, Henry. That was plenty. I'm not sure it wasn't too much, but it was plenty. Thank you very much. Now look, don't just fold up your sword there. Hold it and give it a good brandish, because this lot have never seen an actual knight in armour before. Now that Henry here is making our first point. He is handed. Okay, and that's the first point that distinguishes us from all of the other animals. And we'll be looking at that in a moment. Right, so that's point number one. Now, what else do we already know about Henry? And that is he's a communicator, because he's just rallied the troops before Agincourt. So that's all right. Fine. In a structured language, which you could understand. Of course, there are many languages which you can't understand, and we'll see some more of those today. Now, what else do we see here? We see Henry's shield, all right? That's to keep off the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, which attack us all. Okay, but there are two other things here. Remember, I want you to go back in your imagination now to the medieval battlefield, right? They're all fighting, and Henry's got his visor down, and no one can tell who Henry is. The only way that he's recognizable on the battlefield is by the emblems on his shield. And so that will tell you at once, of course you can always all read heraldry, that, of course, he is a son of Francois Ier of France. More than that, and we couldn't resist this, Henry, we'll let you breathe again now. Are you okay? Your feathers drooping a bit at the back there, but that's fine. Now, the point here is we couldn't resist, because these lectures are on chirality, we couldn't resist putting a bar sinister on his shield, which denotes the fact that this son of Francois Ier, in common with a great many other of Francois Premier's sons, was illegitimate. Henry, thank you very much for coming to help us, and all the best with getting your horse out. Thanks. This question of his shield, of course, is the matter of recognition. And we're going to see that recognition at the molecular level is crucial in our interactions with molecules. But that's coming. Now, the other thing that we could tell from Henry, of course, straight away, was that he was standing up. He was on his two hind limbs. And there's a big difference if you think about many animals. He's bipedal, Henry is bipedal, but many animals, of course, are walking on four legs. And then, of course, they can't use those four legs for anything else but walking. I mean, that's fairly obvious. I mean, horses don't shave, for example. Okay. Now, what is the advantage, then, of standing upright? Well, the advantage is that it frees two very important parts of you for doing things more interesting than walking. First of all, it frees your mouth from gathering forage and so on, like a giraffe. So that's one advantage. And the other advantage is that it frees the hands for making implements. And that, of course, was a vital part of the evolution of man, the development of the ability of the hands to make implements. And if we just think of that situation, we have man making lenses, for example. And the manufacture of lenses has broadened man's horizons in a very important way. It's allowed him to see out to the far corners of the universe with a telescope. So that's extended in that direction. And then by making lenses for a microscope, it's allowed him to view the miniature microscopic world. And so in those two instances, we've widened man's horizons tremendously. Now, language, of course, is spoken. We're used to a spoken language. But that's not the only language that we could imagine, because we can imagine sign language. Let us just imagine what it was like in the early jungle, right? Here we've got George and Fred. I told you you'd have to use your imaginations. We've got George and Fred, early men, Stone Age. And they've got a boar in the thicket, and they need that for lunch. Okay, so how are they going to get? Obviously, Fred can call over to George saying, look, George, there's a boar in the thicket. We'll have a go. But if you think about that strategically, then, of course, it might be better to have sign language, which would indicate to George from Fred that that was the place to come. And we can make a very important point here, that spoken language is very good, but a silent language can be very efficient. Let us just illustrate that, because it is also a language that depends on handedness. And of course, you've guessed what that is going to be. That's going to be sign language for the deaf. And we're very lucky to have, if I can welcome her down, Catherine, to come, please, and join us. Catherine has come from the Resources for the Disabled, and she can sign. She can do sign language. And you can do, we've got a deaf colleague in the audience, and so she can communicate. And you can communicate. You're a right-handed signer, aren't you, Catherine? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So that is your passive hand, yes, and you're doing most of your signs with your right hand. And so we have a member of the audience who can't hear what I'm saying, Mika, can't hear what I'm saying, but he's in touch. And Catherine is able to sign to him as fast as I can speak. Now, there's a little experiment, because you're in the cradle of British science, the crucible. So let's do a little experiment. We've been talking about appearances and right and left-handedness. Can a deaf person pick up the message of sign language when it's reflected in a mirror? We think, so far as we know, that that's a unique experiment, and this is the home of unique experiments. So if you would ask Mika to come down and join us, we can do this experiment. Hello, Mika. Thank you very much for joining us. Would you like just to stand there, because it's important for seeing the reflections? And Catherine, if you'll go round to the mirror, thank you very much. And why not say something to us first? Right? Yes, why not? What I had forgotten to ask you was just to say something to the audience specifically in sign language. All right? So will you say that for us, to the audience? And then tell us what you've said. Thank you very much. What did you say?
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
You'd never have guessed it, would you? Very good. Now, can we do the experiment of the reflection of the sign? Now, I think the result of that experiment, Catherine, you're going to have to tell me.
I said, hello, Mika. It's nice to see you
Yes.
again.
Very good. And Mika could understand.
And he said, it's nice to see you again, too.
Very good. And so this language is so effective that even when the images are reversed, as we shall see at the very end of the lecture, communication is unaffected. Thank you very much indeed for coming and helping us with this demonstration. Goodbye, and thank you very much. Catherine, cheerio, and thanks very much. Very good. Right, now, what about handedness and its distribution? because we want to keep a clear idea of where we're going in terms of the significance of handedness. So let's look at its distribution. And let's start off, because we're in Faraday's famous laboratories, by just having a quick look at Faraday's handedness. You can all pull your own £20 notes out of your pockets. You've got a £20 note, have you? You haven't? Oh, never mind. Perhaps you'll get one for Christmas. If you do, then look on the back side of the £20 note. And what you'll see, of course, here is Faraday with a giant test tube in his hand. Wish we had those as big as that. And he is right-handed. Fine. Now you could say, well, you could almost have bet that. Quite right. But let's do the statistics here. And let's just check on the handedness of the audience. So let's just check first, please. All left-handers, up with your hands, please. Right, just count those off. Yes, pretty good. And in the gallery, so you don't feel ignored. Very good, thank you very much. Hands down. And then can we have all the right-handers with your hands up, please? Very good. That's fine. Yes, I've got it exactly. That's 9.4% of you are 9.4% of you are left-handed. Now you're going to say, well, he didn't count that. I didn't need to. You're a big enough statistical sample to obey the rules of British left-handedness, which means that 9.4% of the population are left-handed. So there was actually nothing very profound about that bit of analysis, as a matter of fact. Okay, fine. But what about animals then? We know about this sort of proportion of handedness in ourselves. It's well known. But what about the significance of the handedness of other creatures? Right. Well, let's look at an animal who has actually been greatly studied from the point of view, actually not of handedness, but of pawedness. Michael, will you bring what we have to see here? I nearly said what it was. That would have given the show away, wouldn't it? All right, dump up there. Very good. How old are you?
I'm 9.
9? Right. And you're a professional rat handler, presumably, are you? Look at that. That's beautiful. Okay, super. And what's his name?
Tosh.
Tosh. And how old is he?
3.
3. Right. Okay. Now, here's your problem. We want to try and see if the audience can see if Tosh is handed or not, or pawed, right? So is it possible to sort of turn him? It's very difficult to do experiments with rats. Will you turn? That's very good. And just, all right. So if anything, he's a right-pawed rat. Okay, will you believe that? That's very good. If you believe that, you believe anything. You've got some more things to believe. Right. That's jolly good. Thanks very much. That's splendid. Can you get him back in there all right without him just a bit worried about that brain there, that's all. That's jolly good. Thank you very much indeed. That's fine.
Right.
So here we have but you might say, well, okay, rat pawedness, what's that got to do with anything? But let's look now at an animal which is even more like us, okay? And we must go to the primates. And we all know people who look like monkeys, and fine, we've got a chimpanzee to help us with this point. And if I can ask Mary Chipperfield, thank you very much for coming. Welcome to the Royal Institution. Very nice to see you. And Susie.
Sit down.
Jolly good.
Sit down.
Hi, Susie. She's beautiful. We could spend the whole lecture playing with Susie, couldn't we? How old is Susie?
Susie's 6.
6,
Yes.
right. And she's used to show business, obviously.
Oh,
By
yes,
the time
she's used to all
she's
this.
so good and very appealing look. Right, lovely. Now, what I want you to look at is Susie's hand. All right. If we can just hold up Susie's hand like that.
Susie, put your feet down.
All right. Okay. There we are. Beautiful.
Hold your hand up.
Right, and look at what I want you to look at here, of course, is that Susie's hand looks extremely like our hands, but notice the position of her thumb. See, it's a long way down the palm of her hand, right? And then I want you to compare that with my hand. The resemblance is quite embarrassing, actually, but the point is that my thumb is a good deal further up the palm of my hand. And when I close my hand like that, all my fingers will come together against my thumb, and Susie can't do that. She can clench. She's absolutely marvellous at hanging from branches and so on like that, but she's never going to make an implement. She hasn't got the physical apparatus for that. Okay, but we don't want to put Susie down, because one thing she's far better at doing than we can is, of course, peeling fruit. Aren't you, Susie? And I know what you're thinking. And it just happens. Every lecture I go to, I always carry a banana. And, hey, what do you think of that, Susie? Now, see, watch this operation. The teeth and the hands are coming in very well. And she doesn't need this finger opposition to do this particular job. Has she had any lunch?
She's been waiting
No,
for the
she's been
banana.
waiting for the banana. Yes, jolly good. Okay. And so what we see here then is a hand which is very like us, but it's different. Its capabilities are different, and that's appropriate. Thanks ever so much, Mary, for bringing her along.
Come on, we'll finish
Hope
this
she'll
now.
enjoy the rest of that for tea. Do you want a hand down? Marvellous.
Come on,
Jolly good.
Susie.
Thank you very much. Now, the next matter that we should address in this theme of handedness is, well, it's all very well to say left-handed, right-handed. Okay, now we're 9.4% left-handed. But how long have we been like that? Well, we could look at early images. Cave paintings, of course, in principle can give this information, but it's actually very difficult to get pictures of cave paintings which give us this sort of information. But we've got some pictures from the British Museum which show this situation. Pictures, representations of early man, and you can see, of course, here that we've got man with a stick, an early man with a stick in his right hand, and early man with a stick in his right hand. Okay? And we've got one more slide. I think here we are. Yes, tool making here. Here is somebody holding a stick in the left hand, but banging away at flints and so on, which we're just coming on to here, again, is a right-handed operation. So this, in broad terms, would seem to fit. But what about going back into the early history of man? Let's go back 500,000 years. What was the lifestyle of Pleistocene man? Well, Pleistocene man, his lifestyle was different from modern man. He'd come back from a hard day in the jungle with a dead deer over his shoulder. And he'd come staggering into his cave. You can just imagine it. And the cave floor is covered with rubbish and droppings and everything, and there's nowhere to put anything. And he's got a problem because he badly needs to have dinner. Okay. So what's he going to do? What implements are available to Pleistocene man? And indeed, how can we deduce what the handedness of Pleistocene man is from any information that we have available? Right. So, starting with Pleistocene man's dinner, what does he do? Well, he takes a flint knife. And we've got some flint knives here from this era. Okay. They look very simple and very crude, but they are in fact extremely sharp. You could actually carve up your dinner with one of these today. It's a tribute both to flint and to Pleistocene man, I suppose. So I'm going to take my Pleistocene razor almost, because that edge is razor sharp, and I can cut sections of meat off the carcass. But of course I've got nowhere to put it, so I'm going to put it in my teeth. I'm going to hold one end in my teeth and cut bits off, and that's fine. I can have a mouthful with each successive cut. But you can't do that close to your mouth with a flint knife without damage to your teeth. You can't do that. And so when we look at the teeth of Pleistocene man, what we see is in fact transverse scratches. Now, this of course is a huge magnification, but that's actually the tooth, the surface of the tooth looking out at you. So it's got scratches across its surface. And if you think about it, that's what's going to happen when you drag your Pleistocene flint knife across your teeth. They're going to scratch them. So this is the actual. I've got Yorick here, the Pleistocene man, and when we draw the flint knife across his teeth, they scratch. Now, of course, what you should be saying, well, that's all very well, but if your theory, and of course it's only a hypothesis, if there's anything in what you say, then there should be a population of Pleistocene teeth which are scratched not in that direction, but in the opposite direction. And there are, because otherwise, of course, I wouldn't have told you about that theory. But then that's not quite good enough, because it could be that all teeth are scratched anyway. And so perhaps it's proper that we should look, and I just happen to have here a bear's skull, and you can imagine that gnashing at early man, can't you? I mean, George and Fred in the thicket, confronted by the owner of this set of dentition, would have been a mighty frightened guy, I think. But the point is that on the bear's teeth, there aren't scratches which correspond in any way to the scratches that we see in Pleistocene man. So then the next question that we can raise in this examination of handedness or chirality is it cultural? Is it something that's come about simply by education or social pressure? Because, for example, in many societies, left-handedness is suppressed. Left-handies get a bad press in general. And we know something about this because a colleague of mine in Sheffield, Professor Kevin Connolly, has studied the psychology of a Stone Age tribe from Papua New Guinea. Let me just show you their pictures. So here we have a Papuan, and he's been unaffected by telly, remember, and education as well. And what we see here is, of course, he's operating here essentially with a right-handed bias. And so what Kevin Connolly was doing was to observe the handedness of these people and also to watch them carrying out simple tasks like moving pegs from a hole on one side of a board to a hole on the other side of the board. And basically what he observed there was that for the skilled tasks which needed good manipulative skills, Papuan Stone Age man was right-handed in very roughly the same proportions as we are today. But that for other skills, like the skill with the board and so on, which is, of course, a very rudimentary skill, Papuan natives tended to be ambidextrous. In other words, they used their complementary hand more than we would. And this then raises the question, well, is such training, such experience, does that mean that our unnatural hand cannot be trained? See, all the time we must keep asking questions. That's the nature of science. We must get to know. That's the nature of science. It's knowing about things. And that, of course, we must keep asking questions. And so, can we train our unnatural hand, supposing a right-hander, can they train their left hand to do precise manipulations? And the only way to deal with that question is to ask for a demonstration. And we're very lucky to have with us Elizabeth. Hello, Elizabeth Darwin. And Elizabeth is the great-great-granddaughter of Charles Darwin. And, of course, as you know, when you're playing, and you're a right-hander, aren't you, Elizabeth? Okay. In other words, you're going to bow with your right hand, and so you have had to train your left hand so that you can play for us, haven't you? Okay. So what we want to do, of course, is watch your left hand in operation while you're playing. Please play. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what is plain is that the left hand can be trained. Thank you very much for coming. Now what about our other senses? What about the chirality of our other senses? We've been talking about our handedness, but have we got differentials between our other sensing abilities? Well, again, let us do a little test, because that's the nature of science. And what I need, 6 volunteers who would like to volunteer. Don't be shy. All right. Can I come have you to join us? What I'd like you to do is form a little orderly queue of 6 there. Thank you very much. That's fine. Yes, that's right. Just come there, and you can be front of the queue there. Will that be all right? Right, so you're our marker lady. Will you come and join us there too? Thank you very much. And would you like to come down? Very good. Thank you very much. And would you like to come and join us? Yes, go on. Yes, jolly good. Yes. Why don't you come too? How many more have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 more. Jolly good. Will you join us? Thank you very much. And that's fine. What are your names? Elizabeth.
Ursula.
Ursula.
George.
Alex. Alex. We've had you in the thicket, haven't we? Alex and
Tani.
Tani?
Alexander.
Alexander. Right. Now, here's what I want you to do. Bryson has fixed up this piece of equipment for us. Okay. What I want you to do is come and look through, and when you see a flash, that's all you need to do. Okay, and then I want you to come and join me. All right? Fine. So just look through the little tube. That's right. That's good. Come on, that's right. And you come and sit there beside me. That's fine. Face the audience so they can see you. Ursula, please. That's good. And will you just stand there? That's fine. Thank you very much. Come on, George. That's fine. Thanks very much. And you come and stand rather beside you. Very good. That's very good. You come and stand there. That's fine. Okay. And will you come and... Yeah. Right. Fine. Now, would you like just to sort of shift up the bed a bit? That's fine. Very good. Thanks. Now, what we've seen here, what we've actually tested here is eye dominance. And what we're seeing is actually all of these are right eye dominant, and you're a left eye dominant. Okay. Now then, we could ask the question, what's the relationship between that and handedness, if any, because that's the sort of correlation that we could look for. So, hands up the left-handers, hands up the right-handers, and then hands up who don't use any hands at all. Right, that's very good. Okay, thank you very much. So what we're seeing there is there's not a straight correlation. Fine. Now, all of these matters that we've been talking about, language, recognition, control, senses, these are all operated by the brain, the control center of our bodies. And so, of course, we must have a brain to show you. We've actually got a number of brains to show you, but let's start off with the real thing. And what we have is a famous brain, the brain of a famous surgeon from the last century. This is preserved in the Hunterian Museum here in London. And what I want you to notice about this brain is, first of all, of course, its surface is covered with these sort of convolutions. It's actually remarkably lacking in structure from the outside, except, of course, that you can see that it has two halves, hemispheres, okay, with a deep groove between them. They are connected further back, but there's a deep groove between them, okay? And these two halves of the brain are usually of unequal size. In most subjects, the left-hand side is the larger, quite a lot larger, as a matter of fact. Now, let us just look at this on the model, and we've got Andrew here. I just called him after the editor of a market tabloid. And here's this brain, and what we've got here then is Andrew's half brain. Now, what we want to notice about the brain is, first of all, its surface is very convoluted. And we started off with language, and language predominantly comes from the left-hand side of the brain and in a specific area called Broca's area. American anatomists call it the planum temporale. Okay, and it's that area which controls language. We can tell that, of course, because if people suffer brain damage, particularly on the left-hand side, they very often lose their speech as well. Of course, there's recovery and so on, but that, if that area is affected, then language is affected, and that's how we know what's going on. Okay, and so the brain itself is chiral. It is handed. It is left-handed and right-handed. And then we can say, well, okay, has that always been the case? Has that been the situation? And in this connection, the intriguing matter is we've seen Catherine signing, and the extraordinary relationship between the location of language in the brain also applies to the deaf. And so they can, that signing is affected by the left-hand side of the brain. In other words, the language component is very direct. But let's go back in time. Let's go back now 200,000 years to the Sudan. And what we see here is what is called an endocranial cast. In other words, this skull was found in the Sudan, and then it was filled with an appropriate setting material so that we could get a cast of the inside surface of this Singa skull. And what I want you to notice about this skull is that it is this side which is larger, and that's the way that the skull points. In other words, so I lifted that out, that would be facing front, and it is the right-hand side which is larger. And so this individual was almost certainly left-handed, but more than that, this skull is thickened in a number of critical areas, and from that thickening we can deduce that Singa man was not only left-handed, but he suffered from sickle cell anemia as well. Poor chap. Okay, so that tells us a lot. The asymmetry of the brain is a very important matter to which we will return at the very end of the lectures. Right, so let's just have a little reprise at this point. Just let's see where we've come from and where we're going. We've looked at handedness and language and recognition, and then, of course, we can examine the proportions of that, the statistics of that, the experience of that. But what about our perception of left and right? How easy is it for us to tell left and right? Our axes are usually very well defined and very easy to recognize. We can always tell whether we're up or down, and we can always tell whether we're front or back. Nobody has any problem with that. But knowing one's left from one's right is not so easy. And I'm not at all good at that. My family get very irritated with me when out driving and I take a left-hand turn when I should have taken a right-hand turn. And it's one of these problems that beset very intelligent people. It's just, you just have to put up with that. And so I thought, well, all you people who are thinking, well, I know my left from my right, well, we'll just test you out and just see how good you are at it. All right, so you're all familiar with the great classical pictures, and at huge expense, we've brought for you from the Louvre the actual picture. Now, this is the Mona Lisa. Which way does Mona Lisa face? All right? Hands up, all who think she faces to her left. Hands up, come on, don't be afraid. If any of you think, yes, right? Only about, I should think, as you know, I'm very quick at assessing populations, and I should think it's about 8.3%. That's fine. Right. All the people who think she faces to her right. Right, okay. I detect that we've got a few don't knows. Or are you Social Democrats? No, all right, fine. Well, I'll tell you, it was only the little group that was right. Here is Mona Lisa, and there she is. That's the direction in which she faces. Okay. Right, well, let me give you one more little test. No cheating now. You've been handling, you've been on the tube to get here, and you've been paying your fare with a coin. So when you look at the head side of the coin, which cheek of the Queen do you see? Is it her left cheek, or is it her right cheek? Hands up, who thinks it's her left cheek? Left cheek, right, there seems to be quite, yes, they would win the election, I think. Let's have a look at the right cheek population. Thank you very much. Don't knows. And of don't cares, of course, you can have those, yes? Or, fine. Right. Well, you see, your actual perceptions are not really at all good. I'm just going to show you coin. Oh, gosh. Bryson, I haven't got any change. Have you got some? Have you got a 10p? Oh. Very good. Thank you very much. Great. He just had that in his back pocket. Okay, so there's 10p piece. Are you ready, all you people who so confidently voted left? Because you were wrong. It was in fact the right cheek of the Queen that you saw. What I'm really saying is, of course, you've got to brush up on your chirality a bit. You're not quite as confident as you thought. Thank you very much. What about animals? Can animals tell their left from their right? Well, a large number of experiments have been done in this matter. Psychologists love to submit animals to all sorts of indignities in quest for information of this sort. Well, we're just going to have a quick look at an animal that's been certainly trained to know its right from its left, and Bryson has brought it in from his aviary, and here is Fred the Flyer. Aren't they beautiful? Whoa! And Fred the Flyer, yes, well, okay. He'll just take off. You could give him a lift off, actually, if you like. He's very tame. But now, pigeons, the nice thing about pigeons is that, of course, they're marvelous navigators. So long as that pigeon is wild, not a soul is going to listen to what I've got to say. There is actually, of course, a saying in show business, never appear with children, animals, and actually, we've had to add a third with these lectures, and that is, never appear with a mirror. And we're just going to do that in this final section of the lectures. Now, we've been bandying about this business of mirrors and handedness and so on. And so, just to give you a feel en passant of mirrors. Mirrors are so familiar, we thought it would be nice just to show you an old mirror. Here we have a mirror from Iran, and it's 1700 BC. So we can imagine a Persian princess having a primp with that mirror. And then we come to this little French mirror from the 16th century. Fred the Flyer is going back to his nest, thank goodness. And here we have a little 17th century French mirror. But when we look in the mirror, of course, that's an extremely familiar visual experience. The trouble is that mirror images are rather confusing, and it's really rather important that we compare what is being viewed in the mirror with what is seen in the mirror. To put it in a slightly technical way, we want to be able to compare object and mirror image. Now, that's not at all easy to do if we want to do that with a person. With one special exception, and that is if we have identical twins, monozygotic twins. And we've got Krista and Carla in the audience. Will you come down and join us, please? Very nice to see you. Hello. Hello. Just stand one on each side of me so that we can really convince they are identicals. How old are you? You
19.
pair? 19. And yes, you must be being asked all the time, how do you ever know us apart, and so on. Is that right? Is that what you have to put up with?
Yeah.
It's a real pain, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't mind? All right, well, that's good. Okay, now, I tell you what we want you to do, because what we want to see is one of you and then the mirror image. Get it? So will you come and stand on the spot? That's very good. And you can all see how symmetrical she looks. Okay? And then I'm going to get mixed up. You're Carla and you're Krista, aren't you? Yes, yes. I can tell by your shoes, you see. Yes, I'm very glad you left those on. Right. Now, you look into the mirror, and the audience can see the mirror image beside. Okay. And, of course, they look identical. They are identical. They're identical twins. Okay. So, now, will you put one of your hands on your head? Okay, right. Now, I want you to be the mirror image. Okay. All right. You're the mirror image. Now, will you come and stand together? All right, that's fine. Like that and like that. Let me just shove you about so that everybody can see. And we see actually a rather remarkable situation, don't we? That these two are no longer identical twins. They're different. So, will you come and stand in front? That's fine. And now I think you can see the fancy word for this is that they are not superimposable. Okay? These are now object and mirror image. And so already we're seeing something rather intriguing and mysterious about the relationship of an object with its mirror image. These two are now not symmetrical. They are chiral, or handed. If you like, one is a left-handed one, and one is a right-handed one. And that at the molecular level is a crucially important matter. I can't stress it too much. Fine. Okay, thanks very much, girls. We're going to see... Now let me just rub that home because it's so important. And that is that if we take an object like this one, and you see its mirror image like that, okay. And then if we take out the mirror image, right, you can see that those go together to make the whole object, and of course, the two halves are identical. There's a plane of symmetry there. That is a plane of symmetry. Fine. So we've now compared object and mirror image for symmetric and asymmetric objects. Fine. But then if we look at ourselves, remember this is man in the mirror that we're thinking about today. What are the distinctive features of ourselves which make us unique? And these are two things I'd like to suggest to you. First of all, they are our fingerprints. Now, when you go home, I want you to study your own fingerprints, because you're not just here to enjoy yourselves, all right? You're going to study your own fingerprints, and we are going to study the fingerprints of two people who look identical. And so the question is, are their fingerprints identical as well? Now, to make this study, we need the full resources of Scotland Yard. And I'm very delighted to be able to welcome Inspector Tulloch. Thank you very much for coming. And Carla and Krista, will you come down again and submit to the indignity of having your fingerprints taken? Thank you very much.
You just relax your hand now. I'll do all the hard work. What I'm going to do is gently roll your finger. Like that. You don't need to press. There we are. Lovely. And your middle finger too. And then we'll be able to compare them. Nice and gently. Rolled across. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Now we'll have a look at the fingerprints in a minute. Now, we've done a little bit of sort of pre-measuring, because otherwise we just can't do the job quick enough. And if we look at Carla and Krista's fingerprints here, I think you can see that the differences, and what they are their, I think, left hand middle fingers. And there's honestly no cheating. You can see that the shape of the fingers, of course, is identical, but the fingerprints are different. You can see a jump there and a bit there. They're really quite different. We can easily tell the difference between Carla and Krista by fingerprinting. And then let us just finish our examination of the chirality of ourselves by looking at some familiar faces. And what we're doing is to see how symmetrical they are. I can look around this audience and you look beautifully symmetrical, beautifully, most of you. But let's just look at one or two familiar faces. Let's look at Faraday, for example. Okay, here he is on the £20 note again, and you can see a signature along the bottom. That's fine. Now let's have a look at two left sides put together. Of course, we have to reverse one, but it's the mirror image of the left side put together with the left side. And what do we see? We see a very, very different looking Faraday. Let's have a look at another now familiar face. Yes, poor chap. And let's just do the same operation. And then we see a different face. If the last grant application had been successful, this one would have looked a bit more cheerful. All right, but okay, we don't stay down in the mouth for long. Let us look at another familiar image. Here's the full face. This you may recognize as Kylie Minogue. Now watch carefully. There's an important point here, and that's the superimposition. You'd hardly notice it, would you? And that's a classical definition of beauty, that the difference, the symmetry, the degree of symmetry is very high. Definition of beauty. So let's look finally at a living situation. And we've got the most sophisticated piece of equipment here. Would you like to come down and help us? Can I invite you to help us? Of course I can. Thank you very much for coming. What's your name?
Alistair.
Alistair. Now, this is actually quite painless. What we want you to do is just stand in there with your heels against the back there. Okay, that's it. That's good. That's very good. And just rest there. Just relax completely. It's very good. It's absolutely, the electric shock won't do much. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. What we want to do is to superimpose your image, okay, and we can see from this superimposition that Alistair is not as symmetrical as you might expect, okay? We can get a different appearance by putting the two parts together. I meant, you're looking at the red light, so you've been very well behaved. So that's very good. Thank you very much, Alistair, for submitting to this torture. Very good. Well done. Thank you. So man is chiral. He's handed. And so we can now raise the question, what about the environment that he lives in? What about his interactions with the things that he comes in contact with, the artifacts that he's made, the buildings that he's lived in, the biology that he shares the surface of the planet with? And that is the subject of the next lecture. Thank you very much.